Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Farina. I work at the British Council Lahore Library and I welcome you all to the second session of the Impact series. Today we are going to be talking about surviving the economic crisis in the context of COVID-19. Before we start, I will be making some short announcements in terms of the house rules that we follow around here. Please note that you have to keep your cameras and mics off at all times to avoid disruption. And we would love to take questions from you. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat box. We will take them to our panelists of today. And please note that it's a safe space for everyone. And we would appreciate if there is no disturbance during the event and we create a safe online space. And lastly, this event will be recorded for quality insurance purposes. So today we will be in conversation with two very amazing and very talented individuals. Before we start our conversation, I would like to tell you a little bit about them. So on our panel, we have Mr. Faraz Khan, who is a multi-stakeholder investment and impact specialist. He's an author and public speaker with over 25 years of experience, and he is the founder of Social Entrepreneurship and Equity Development, which is also known as the Seed Ventures. Seed is an investment and impact development organization in Pakistan, and within 10 years, he has taken the group from an idea to a sustainable organization with a turnover of 40 million for Seed and its portfolio companies. And Forbes has recognized Seed's Enterprise Challenge as one of the 5 leading global programs supporting the next generation of entrepreneurs. Faraz is also visiting professor at St. Mary's University at the UK. Welcome to the session, Faraz.
Thank you so much.
And with him, we have Miss Shaista Ayesha, who has also been with Seed since 2011. She began her career in banking with HBL, and her vast exposure to SME sector and researches based on different aspects of SMEs in Pakistan has added to her comprehension of improving entrepreneurial scenarios at different levels. She was head of product development at Seed and was responsible for curriculum and project development. And she is also a trained social enterprise academy facilitator and has a strong understanding of impact and sustainability. Her experience in banking and her current work in impact complements her work as she can develop initiatives that have a business and a social impact. She is also a BOP trainer and mentor and has developed a strong aptitude for guiding micro enterprises in their business development journey. So as you guys can tell, we have these two very awesome individuals and I'm very excited to ask them a bunch of questions. And before we start, Faraz, can you tell us and our viewers a little bit about today's session? What exactly are we going to be speaking about?
Thank you, Farina. It was really elaborate introductions, really kind ones too. So thank you for that. Well, today's session is basically a conversation about the times that we are living in and how businesses and social enterprises can become conduits of change and resilience. These are very uncertain times, very difficult times on individual basis, on institutional basis, and as a world as well. And what is the role of business and what is the role of social enterprises and how they can become a reason through which we can overcome this difficult time and move forward in a more strengthened manner. And there are no right and wrong answers to this conversation. It's a deliberation. It's a sharing of experiences that might work for certain individuals and institutions, and some might not. But I think the purpose of having bringing in these 4 fantastic living beings on this particular panel, including Maximus, is to create that conversation and see how we can actually contribute to this change.
Right. So my first question is for both of you. If we talk about businesses in the local context, I have personally seen that there is a lot of food outlets, there's a lot of service-based businesses that have really suffered as a result of COVID-19 and our lockdown. So, how do you think that all of these businesses could strategize a comeback now that we see that things are finally getting better, markets are resuming their work? So, what's the basic strategy that people and business owners could follow to actually come back after the crisis?
Shaista?
Yeah, okay. So to begin with, thank you, Farina, for the introduction. And again, this is a great question. We have been working with a number of micro enterprises, and there have been, so a lot of our work has been related with women-led businesses that have been out of home. Now, what we've noticed is that, pre-pandemic, their concentration in selling or getting to their customers was it was a very singular approach. It was very myopic. It was very, they were not exploring the digital mediums of getting to their customers. So what the pandemic has done, even though it may have impacted their business, it has made them question their business models. It has made them question that whether, operating singularly as an isolated home-based business is the way to go about as we move forward, right? So, people are looking into digital marketing and digitally placing their business. The online retail scenario, it is really, it's one thing that has helped home-based businesses and small and micro businesses survive the pandemic, because it creates access to customers and markets that they possibly did not have before. They were pushed because of the pandemic to pump money into marketing, little or a lot of money, and actually start thinking about communicating more with their customers, and think about logistics, things that they were not thinking about. So in order to come back, I guess what the pandemic has done, it has highlighted to many businesses that you need to start thinking of different ways of selling to your customer. For instance, if we talk about the restaurant industry or the food industry, you have the dine-in model where they're sitting and eating, and suddenly now they're waking up to the fact that, home delivery is important. There should be an online portal where people should be able to order food. Maybe we need more outdoor opening arrangement, outdoor eating arrangement. So, you start thinking of different ways because the business has to survive, right? So the good thing about this pandemic is it has pushed people to think about alternate ways of getting to their customers.
Right. Faraz, what do you think about that?
Well, adding to what just Shaista said, so basically, if you look at it from three angles, one in terms of being, like Shaista said, innovative. Pandemic has definitely pushed people to be innovative within a very constrained environment. The second bit is that it has pushed enterprises and micro enterprises to think about pivoting and think about reconnecting with their customers and identifying the changing needs of the market. That has actually this new reconnection of understanding the price points, the behavior of their customers, and then it has actually revitalized a lot of businesses as well. So if you look at a lot of restaurants, they said that during COVID, because they reconnected, their business did very well in terms of food outlets and all that, simply because the lethargy that they had, okay, customer ne to aana hi aana hai, theek hai, that just went out of the window, and they actually had to go and hunt for businesses and understand the ecosystem in a better way and in a renewed manner. The third bit was and is, I think, that the ability to stretch the dollar a longer way. So how can you do things in a more cost-effective manner, in a way that the quality of whatever you're providing, be it a product or service, is not compromised, but yet you stretch that dollar. Now that is another skill set that I think the entrepreneurs, especially in the food and delivery industry, have realized that how we can do that. And that has actually brought in a lot of conversation and efforts into research, understanding that, what are the distances, what is the cost-effective making of multiple deliveries in a cost-effective manner, providing fresher food in a shorter pace of time to a wider audience. So these three or four things have is the result of COVID and these difficult times that the food and logistic industries have kind of made us do.
Okay, so you both basically touched upon the digital aspect of things and how businesses have kind of moved to the digital side of things. So I just wanted to ask if in the long term of things, since we have, digital presence of businesses everywhere, and then we're also doing online schools, we're doing online events. So do you think that there are just pros to that, or are there cons associated with that as well? Is there like too much noise in the environment now? Do we not, get any slack from it? Is it all digital? Is it like an overload of information, or is it a good thing if we're pivoting toward the digital side? Faraz, what do you think?
See, the whole society was moving towards a more digital space in a particular pace. The only thing that COVID done is actually fast track that pace. And because of that rushed approach out of necessity, there is overload of information. There is a lot of negatives as well. I think the dust will settle, in my opinion. And there would be a more hybrid, as we were talking earlier, mechanism in which the physical and digital will coexist in a more appreciative manner rather than a forced manner.
Okay, Shaista, what are your views on that?
So I think if we are because of social distancing and because of because we're constrained to our particular geographic scopes where we have to make use of the of entering with this digital economy, but it has its pros and cons, and it's different, I guess, for every industry, right? I think the education industry is still adjusting to it, and we now have kids in a world who are already dealing with a lot of digital fatigue, and there now you have this digital model and this online education system, and how do you manage the two things? Similarly, in the work environment, it's most cost effective to work from home, but where do you draw the line? Right? When you're working in an office, you have a certain time frame, but when you're working from home, you can't draw a boundary. It's work from home and it's working the entire day. So where do you draw a line? So I guess identifying those boundaries is extremely important. There is no way that we can undermine the value that comes from face-to-face interaction. Like, it may be a very cost-effective model to work and as we move forward, but the value that is at, for instance, like in our line of work, primarily in the capacity development segment, when we're dealing with beneficiaries and talking to them, it's very different when it's a face-to-face interaction. They kind of let their guard down, they'll start talking about their businesses. And on the other hand, when it's an online training, you have to keep in mind that there will be digital fatigue, and that people will kind of zone out in the middle of the conversation, which is kind of, it doesn't happen if they're sitting in a. So I guess we'll have to find that balance for each industry and what works. And I guess as we go on, we're still in the discovering phase. So there's like no one bullet answer to this.
Okay, so going into the investment side of things, I've also heard that some people actually believe that this is the best time to save up on your cash instead of investing it or starting a new business. And people are saying that if you're actually lucky to hold a job in these times, you should save all of your money instead of, taking financial risks. What do you guys think about that? Is that a good idea to just like fill up your banks if you have a job and not invest it, or should people take financial risks?
Shaista.
Okay, so I believe it is a time to be cautious, right? There is a time to expand and grow, and then there is a time to be cautious. I believe this year is there's so much flux, right? This entire year has been unpredictable for a lot of industries. We should definitely be very grateful for keeping our jobs, because there are a lot of people out there who've lost their jobs, who are on unpaid leave, and so definitely, if you have a job and you have a paycheck coming in, and you have a place in an organization, we should be grateful to that for that. And I believe, yes, it is. It is. I mean, for the 2 weeks of lockdown that we went under, I was able to save, because I have a lot of fast food, right? So I did manage to save up a lot, and then you tend to realize all the extra unnecessary stuff that you spend your, and it is possible, right? So consumption definitely went down, and it is possible to save. Considering how unpredictable this year is, I would say that it would be a good idea to save and be cautious with money this year.
Okay, Faraz.
I absolutely agree with Shaista that these are difficult times, and yes, I mean the damage, the collateral damage of this pandemic is in terms of employment is devastating, and there are a lot of people who have lost their jobs. Simply another one of the reason is because a lot of people have been very careful about consumption and disposable income. Hence, there is less money in the market in circulation. Hence, people have lost a lot of jobs as well. So yes, it is. These are very tough times. Now, if I take a step back and I pick up two stakeholders, like either investors and then I pick up entrepreneurs, and I don't think that I can speak for all of them, but there are two mindsets that are existing right now. What I can share with you are the mindsets that are out there today. In terms of investors, there is a set of investors. They're saying, "यार, that's it. जो पैसे दे दिए हैं, उन्हीं को हमने manage करना है. जिन startups को invest कर दिया, वही करना है. बस इनको manage सही तरीके से कर लें. We ride it out." And then there are these investors who say, "Okay, no, this is the best time to invest." Why? Because the markets are very down. The deal flow and the price of the deal flow that we're going to get today is going to be really discounted. So let's invest now. Exactly the same way, an entrepreneur who always would think, identifying a challenge and developing a business proposition to solve that challenge, would actually think, "Oh, well, this world is full of challenges right now." Okay, and to create value, impact, and money during these tough times is very much possible, because suddenly there is a huge shift from conventional models to new models, and anyone who can see the future ahead would be actually very excited and say, "Okay, yaar, I want to actually take that quantum leap of faith, and I want to kind of become an entrepreneur in these times only." So, and then on the other hand, there are people who would say, "Okay, let's kind of be safe." There's nothing right, there's nothing wrong. It's just these two mindsets, from the investor's perspective as well as from the entrepreneur's perspective, that exist today.
Okay. So, Faraz, you have touched upon the what is happening these days. People are actually losing their jobs. Companies are downsizing. There's a recruitment freeze everywhere. So my question to both of you is that what should businesses and companies do in these times? Because they naturally require staff, and especially if a company fresh comes out of a crisis, it needs that staff on hand because it cannot do without the regular staffing. But at the same time, they don't have the resources, so they're unable to afford all those staff members. So what is the the right, I guess, strategy in these times? How do they navigate through the recruitment and hiring process? Because also I would say that employees also get fidgety if there's a recruitment freeze on hand. They also want, growth in terms of their career. So there's that challenge as well. What do you guys think? What should companies and businesses do in these times for some employee welfare, I guess? Shaista, how about you go
So I
first?
mean, yeah, I mean, that is a complex question. I will tell you what we did, right? And so we're primarily in the service sector, right? So none of our employees lost their jobs, alhamdulillah, and we did not take any pay cuts. But there is an option that organizations can utilize, right? When you can't pay them as much as you would want to pay them, either you reduce their work scale and you pay them for what it is that they can do. This is something that Hewlett Packard did when they were thinking of downsizing, and they kind of re-engineered. They reduced the work hours for their employees. They didn't fire anyone, but they reduced the pay as well. So that this way what you're able to do is you're able to maintain loyalty and goodwill because you're not firing anyone. But it makes sense, right, that you tell them that because you're working for a lesser amount of time, we're going to pay you less, so that way people get to keep their jobs. And the other is, of course, unpaid leave, where you tell them that you're still associated with the organization, but you're not going to get paid for X number of months. And I also personally feel that some companies have had to take very, very hard calls. They didn't want to make that choice, but they've had to make that choice. So project related organizations, I believe it has worked for them. But somebody in the manufacturing business or somebody who's running a factory, they probably had to lay off a lot of staff. So I mean, one way is possibly to reduce work hours and also to reduce pay. The other is, to possibly send an X number of employees on unpaid leaves, which is what I think most of the organizations in the UK also did. So that's a possibility.
Okay, Faraz, how about you? What are your ideas on this?
Let me just kind of approach this question from a different, not a different, but the angle I want to focus on is in hard times, an established company or a company that has been in operation, be it in manufacturing or be it in service, they have a choice. Okay, there are certain things that you face because of external, situations like a disaster or a pandemic. ठीक है, वो तो हो गया. It's a choice of whatever resources you've got left, be it human resources, be it financial resources, of how to create the best mix to not only survive or thrive. So अब यहाँ भी एक होता है, बोलते हैं कि यार submerge हो जाती हैं. Then there are these organizations who just barely survive. And then there are these organizations who really, really thrive. Okay, and what is the difference? Of course, the nimbleness, the pivotness, but it's the mindset and the cohesion and the teamwork in the same direction that actually sets a company that is barely surviving to submerging to thriving. ठीक है? Now, किसी भी disaster में, किसी उसमें भी opportunities होती हैं. There are no two ways about that. Now, either you are an institution that identifies and work towards that, in that time frame, or you're not. Or you barely do it, or you do it a little bit, or you don't do it at all. And I think any and every company should actually just sit back and should think about which is in तीन ब्रैकेट्स में हमारी और आपकी कंपनी किस ब्रैकेट में जाती है. क्या हम डूबने वाले हैं, या बेरली सरवाइव करने वाले हैं, या थ्राइव करेंगे हम. So the first is the mindset. And then you actually develop that plan to identify these opportunities and go for it. And I think whether you hiring and firing and reducing the times and increasing the times, all are a result of these three mindsets. And we need to be kind of wary of these three mindsets. And then you will see different approaches happening in different organizations.
Yeah. So linking up to that, I'll just quickly, before we move on to the next question, I'll take a question that we have in the chat box. And this obviously has to do with the COVID-19 context of working from home. So the question is, how can we reduce the negative effects of work from home for people with home responsibilities or house and care work when it comes to women working from home and like female students? Shaista, how about you answer this question because you have talked about your
I mean, so we tried with two different models, I would say in my case, right? One is to stretch the work, to take it really liberally and, just stretch the work from home for the entire day. What happens is when you don't draw a boundary, there is burnout because you're always working and you're unable to separate home life from work life. So even though it is so I realize that even though it is in a different environment, work from home, well, I'm working, but I'm just not doing it in the office. So you need to kind of structure your day and you need to kind of integrate it. So, for instance, you have, there's lunchtime, there's dinner time, you have to give the kids a shower and, all of that and yada, yada. So you kind of have to integrate your way around it, right? So there have to be like about 2 hours of uninterrupted time when you're just working, and then you kind of you have to break it down. It can't be, you can't expect the same kind of how shall I say this, work time commitment when you're working from home, because it just doesn't work that way. People walk in, and if you're a mother, you're consistently and constantly needed by your children. So you need to kind of say, okay, so these 2 hours, and I need to set that point in time. And with respect to how do you reduce the negative effects, so either you can sit down in your pajamas and you can take your work day, or you get dressed like you would for work to at least get yourself in the mental frame. Because if you don't do that, until I wasn't doing that, I wasn't able to get into the groove, right? And then what we did, or what the team started doing, is that we started dressing up like we were actually going to work, and we had this certain section of the day when we were online, and then we were offline. You have to have those boundaries, because if you don't, then it just mixes up and that just gets really ugly. So, and then there's burnout. So you don't want that. So draw some boundaries and start early in the quiet time of the day, when there's not a lot of disturbance or interruption, and stop. Yeah. It's important to get up and leave and say, okay, well, 2 hours later. You don't do it on a consistent basis, because there's just there's only so much that the mind can do. There's only so much intellectual input it will give. So you need to give it a rest. You need to kind of divorce from the whole process and then come back. So yeah, I hope that.
Yeah, you're right, because even in our experience of working from home, there comes a certain point in time where we're just not as creative as we should be. And then we naturally need a break, re-energize ourselves, and then we create content. So I agree that you need to, draw boundaries and get some rest time and then go back to work.
Yeah.
So Faraz, my next question is pretty straightforward, and I'll just direct it to you, and then Shaista can go with that. So this question is for people who are starting a new business. So you guys have a lot of experience in entrepreneurship. So what do you guys think are the basic instruments or the tricks of the trade that people can use if they're starting a new business and they're super new into it, they have no prior experience?
Starting a business is basically a human nature. If you look at it, why human nature is because humans when they're kids and then they grow, they learn new things, okay, and then they get good at it. So learning is a human trait, okay, and then getting expert, be it walking, be it talking, be it eating. These are basic things that a human learns, okay, जो वो इस दुनिया में आता है. Exactly the same way, starting a business is basically initiative, and initiative to solve a challenge or an issue or a problem for either yourself or your home or your community or your country or a particular vertical. It's all the same. लोग कहते हैं कि एक मुल्क चलाना बहुत मुश्किल काम है. घर चलाने और मुल्क चलाने में कुछ ज्यादा फर्क नहीं है. बेसिक फैक्टर्स जो हैं वही होते हैं. हाँ, जार्गनिज्म स्केल्स वगैरह बदल जाती हैं, बट इट्स एग्जैक्टली द सेम वे. You want to start a business, you identify what you're good at. You don't know what you're good at and you still want to start a business, great. You identify a particular challenge or a particular problem that you see people having, and you would start developing a solution around it, and then you start monetizing that solution, and that is business. Now, you can't become big straight away. So what you do is you think that you have a solution for that, for a challenge, pilot it out, test it out. Okay, so you're sitting in this home right now, and you suddenly तुम अपने community में जाके देखती हो कि there is no, or for instance you want stationery, right? And you have to drive literally 2 miles to actually go to a stationery store. So suddenly you realize कि मेरे पूरे neighborhood में कोई 1000 घर हैं और stationery shop है ही नहीं कोई. So suddenly you think there is an opportunity for a problem. So you develop a stationery shop in a community where there is no stationery shop. So it's that basic. So don't think rocket science, don't think jargonism, don't think business feasibilities. Go to basics, and then you will, majority of the time, the solutions, the process is very, very natural. हम लोग बहुत ज्यादा कॉम्प्लिकेट कर देते हैं जिंदगी को और चीजों को. होती है बहुत सिंपल चीजें हैं. It's just a matter of kind of focusing it in that simplistic manner. So what Shaista does in one of her segments and programs is to make micro entrepreneurs realize the basics of enterprise development. And I think मुझसे ज़्यादा Shaista is a much better expert in explaining the fundamentals of enterprise. Shaista, over to you.
Yeah, so going back to what Faraz was saying, and from that example of the stationery store that he used, it's very different. For instance, abhi pandemic mein, people needed masks, right? That was like, everybody, and then left, right, and center, you saw people selling masks and selling sanitizers and God knows what. ये एक fad था. पहले 2000 रुपए का डब्बा था, फिर 2500 रुपए का डब्बा हुआ, फिर 3000 का. I think it's gone back down to 300. What is the? So there is a fundamental difference in fulfilling a need जिसकी आपको longevity नजर आ रही कि ये exist करेगी एक community के अंदर, and fulfilling a fad where the masks and the sanitizers are the fad because they've gone right back down to the cost जो आपको originally मिल रही थी उसकी. So it's important कि as an entrepreneur अगर आप नया business start करना चाह रहे हैं तो आपका why बहुत clear हो. Why are you doing whatever it is that you're doing? Is it because your neighbor's doing it? Is it because your brother's doing it? Is it because your best friend's doing it? So are you like following a fad? Because if you are, that fad's going to blow up and vanish pretty soon, and it's going to fade away. So there has to be a fundamental need for whatever it is that you are wanting to develop your product or your service around, right? And then, of course, understanding the market. Now, hota kya hai, generally with entrepreneurship, hum jargon mein phas jate hain. When we're dealing with micro entrepreneurs, I don't use terms like business plan and business model canvas, or because they don't get it, right? It's the jargon is certainly not going to help them understand. But yes, customer need क्या है, आप क्या बना रहे हैं, आप ये क्यों कर रहे हैं और आप किसको बेच रहे हैं, ये 3 सवाल जो है ना, इसके जवाब होने जरूरी हैं. तो आप क्यों स्टेशनरी वो स्टोर खोलना चाहते हैं, पहली बात. दूसरी चीज ये है कि ये किस आपका कस्टमर सेगमेंट कौन होगा, बच्चे होंगे, बड़े होंगे, कौन लोग होंगे, राइट. और क्या चीजें बेचेंगे आप. ये 3 चीजें आपका प्रोडक्ट प्रोफाइल या आपकी सर्विस या आपकी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को डिफाइन करते हैं. और उसके बाद फिर आप कहते हैं कि अच्छा भाई मुझे 4 लोग रखने दुकान में या 2 लोग रखने. ये सारे आंसर्स उसके बाद आना शुरू. So it is, like Faraz said, it's a very simple formula. And because इतना jargon business schools ने plug in कर दिया है, तो हमें लगता है कि बहुत ही complex चीज है. But it's very simple ना. अगर किसी community में पानी की वो टैप नहीं है, राइट, और आपको लगता है कि आप वो लगवा सकते हैं वहां और आप फी कैन 2 रुपए चार्ज कर सकते हैं, सिंपल सा फॉर्मूला है ना, क्योंकि वहां लोगों को पानी चाहिए. तो अब इसमें कितनी, और वो पानी तो मुस्तकिल चाहिए, ऐसी चीज नहीं है जो आज चाहिए मुझे और 10 दिन बाद नहीं चाहिए होगी. तो नीड और नीड की जो लाइफ स्पैन है वो लंबी होनी चाहिए, तो आपका बिजनेस चलेगा. ऐसी चीज नहीं है कि आज है और कल नहीं है. सो आई गेस ये 3 चीजें आइडेंटिफाई करना फॉर एनी न्यू बिजनेस पर्सन, छोटा बड़ा किसी भी स्केल का, is the why, the what and the who. I think that's important. Yeah.
Okay, so continuing on to that point, we have a very interesting question, another interesting question in our chat box, that has to do with funding when you're starting a business. So they say that ventures tend to grind to a halt because of a lack of capital. So where can entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs in Pakistan, turn to when it comes to funding?
It depends what stage you're in. If you're at idea stage, there are different sources. If you're at really seed stage, there are different sources. If you're at growth stage, different है. Scale stage, different है. But if you're a budding entrepreneur and you want to kind of start your idea, I think the first step, that a natural step, is bootstrapping. Okay, bootstrapping is friends and family. Okay? Because what bootstrapping does is, चूंकि आप मांग तांग के पैसे ले रहे होते हैं या अपनी जो भी छोटी मोटी सेविंग्स होती हैं उसके साथ कर रहे होते हैं, then you are very conscientious of the fact that you have to utilize this money well. And whatever hypothesis you have of a business, आप उसको practice में लेकर आते हैं. And if your hypothesis works and you have got a successful pilot, then there are seed funders. There are professional seed funding organizations. There is government as well, who's come up with very good programs, and there are a lot of development sector organizations who actually provide convertible and grants for particular startups. So there are mechanisms of fundings across the board. But I think if you're out there to kind of test your idea, do bootstrapping and develop your hypothesis and implement your hypothesis. For instance, you want to actually develop organic food for cats. Okay, now whether it's going to work in Pakistan or not, maybe it would. Okay, but maybe it would. So you need to actually do. Let's say आपने पूरे डिफेंस में, आपने कैंट में, आपने पूरी आपने एक रिसर्च की, आपको पता लगा कि 600 बिलियन, ठीक है. Now this is an affluent area, ठीक है. So you say okay, मैं थोड़े से 50 कैन्स जो है मंगवाती हूँ बाहर से या यहाँ खुद डेवलप करती हूँ, उसकी ब्रांडिंग करती हूँ, and I'll advertise on social media. Meanwhile, you actually take this money from your friends, from your family, from whatever you're earning, थोड़ा सा save करके, you test it out. And suddenly you see, oh my God, there is a huge market for organic cat food. Okay, fair enough. Now that you have developed the hypothesis, there is a market. Then you go to an institution and you say, "Bhai, देखो ये मैंने किया था, ये revenue हुआ है, इस छोटे scale पे हुआ है. Now give me this much money and I can grow the business this much." उसमें आपका share ये हो जाएगा. So that's how it works.
Right. So if we're talking about the business situation in Pakistan, as you guys know, the COVID-19 cases are increasing in the country, and we have imposed smart lockdowns in certain areas, but we are on the verge of a second outbreak and a massive lockdown. So do you think our country and the economy can afford a second lockdown? Can businesses afford a second lockdown in Pakistan? Shaista, what do you think?
I certainly hope we don't go into a second lockdown, but from the way that things are, that is going to happen. But I think एक wave के बाद बहुत सारे businesses ने realize किया होगा कि like जो आपका बिल्कुल पहला सवाल था कि how do you survive the pandemic, right? For instance, जैसे food joints हैं, उन्होंने कहा हम prepared food नहीं बेच सकते, तो हम और क्या कर सकते हैं? How do we keep our customer, right? So they started to sell boxes जिसमें उनके uncooked, like it was a burger patty with the recipe and the sauces, and the customers would order and they would cook on their own. So again, innovation, right? It's hard to say कि हम survive. We've come out of it. We've managed. It has been hard actually. Exports बढ़ गई हैं during the pandemic. उसका result ये हुआ है. Internalize हो गई है हमारी थोड़ी focus. So I think if we stick to the innovation, if people kind of employ the lessons that they have learned in the first wave, we will be able to survive. If we start thinking of alternate mechanisms for delivery, for reaching our customers, for marketing, for actually utilizing digital for what it was meant for, I think micro or small survive kar sakte, because online retail, again, I mean, people while they're sitting home, they'd like to do something, and that is shop usually to kill the boredom. So, tapping into that market and understanding what are the because customer preferences भी change हो गई हैं, pandemic की वजह से. So what are people? There's a surge of the kind of products that customers are buying online, and I believe if we kind of, because अब आप externally इतना नहीं कर सकते और आपकी internal हो गई है business community की, और या हो जानी चाहिए. So I think this is a time for businesses to help other businesses, to help them grow. And I think if we're able to do that, we will be able to survive the second wave.
Okay. Faraz, would you like to add on to that? What are your views?
I agree with that. I think we will. Humans are a very resilient species, and we will. I mean, we will always find a way to survive. It would be tough. Depends upon the severity of the next wave. I'm sure everyone is praying that the severity is not that it's not that severe as it was previously, but ultimately we will find ways. I think these pandemics have really made us realize some other things as well beyond business survival is I think the human context as well. And I think if not in terms of business, but I think the human context would actually thrive in these tough times.
Okay. Sorry, I guess I was on mute. I completely agree with that. People have actually learned to prioritize their relationships as compared to probably their jobs in these times. So, Shaista, you said something about businesses helping other businesses in these times. To kind of link up to that, do you think that we as consumers, like people who are consuming the products, do you think that we have a responsibility to support our local small businesses possibly in these times? Or should we just
Totally.
yeah, what do you
I
think?
think there's a big, I think that so I can only speak from my own personal experience, and I'm very happy to say, I mean, when I look at the online retail landscape, I'm so happy to see that that a lot of local businesses have kind of popped up in this time, specifically with respect to textile garments, आपके stitch जो है बच्चों के, right? A lot of home-based women, because I mean, I think women are so super resilient, and also because बहुत सारी और, I mean, मर्द तो लेते ही हैं वो responsibility, but क्योंकि जब economic वो आपके ऊपर pressure आता है, तो घर की औरत भी contribute करना चाहती है. और हमारे बहुत सारे ऐसे instances रहे हैं जिसमें the husband also started and the wife also started. So she started like out of her kitchen, and you have these little kitchenettes that have opened up and they're selling food, and And I think as consumers, instead of we should be purchasing from these people. We should be supporting local businesses. एक responsibility हम पे है और एक responsibility larger businesses पे है इनको support करने के लिए. Otherwise, how is this segment ever going to grow? You know, they're always going to remain micro. That social mobility is never going to happen unless we push up our demand and we start buying from these people. You know, you have excellent textile brands, and you have leather brands, and all of these are local businesses that people have started either because economic pressure, but you know, they're sustaining themselves. And in order to help them grow, I think we should start looking at more local options for procuring or purchasing our stuff.
Okay. And
I'm sorry, I just want to quickly add. So an individual, but yeah, just again go back to these three levels: individual, institutional, and systemic. So systemic level pe public procurement, public organizations need to actually have a say or a law that actually says that they need to buy local from small entrepreneurs. So that is one bit, that systemic level pay. I think this change, if this COVID scenario continues, this will come in place, and it has to. The other bit is institutional support. Institutional support, like Shaista said. So these big organizations actually do procure instead of importing things from various other countries. They develop the expertise and the skill sets in the local markets and procure a particular percentage of their raw materials in terms of their basic materials or unfinished goods from the local. And then individually as consumers, your corner store or your Karyana store or your vegetable thela across your pond, you've got to support them. Okay, and जब ये तीन किस्म के changes in terms of your purchasing behavior आएंगे, only then you would see things kind of moving forward. And I think it's a choice right now, but if these things persist, it would not be a choice anymore. I think there will be literally laws coming in place saying that ye karo bhai, khuda ke waste.
Okay, so we're almost nearing the end of our session. But before we close, I would just like to ask this question from both of you. Since we all already know, it's pretty much understood that economies world over have suffered. So what do you really think the world and the businesses will look like after we emerge out of this pandemic? I know there's like a long time till we come out of this, but hopefully when we do, how would things look like?
There are a lot of robots with real hearts.
I think a lot of businesses have been humbled into realizing how unpredictable things are. And I think a lot of for instance, I mean, if I could be wrong about this, but I certainly feel we will start looking inside at the systems that we can support, at the people that we can support. I think a lot of people who deserve to be helped have come to light because of this pandemic, and I think economies are kind of waking up to that. They're kind of waking up to the fact that we need to start concentrating on the vulnerable even more. You know, you've suddenly seen this wave post the pandemic of everybody talking about helping women-led enterprises. So that change is definitely coming. And I guess it's here to stay for some time.
I think adding to what Shaista said, compassion. Has to. I mean, be it institutional level or systemic level, both levels, it would actually have its due place that wasn't there previously. So, what the global situation has realized that capitalism is quite fractured. Okay, and impact and social enterprise is the middle way where the sharing of revenues or sharing of booties are like kind of it's a fair share model, is something that would take shape or actually be accelerated. And that is already happening from the VC's point of view, from funds point of view, from the development sector point of view as well. So I think in the next 10 years, you will see a great growth trajectory of more compassion-led and purpose-led businesses and organizations.
Okay. So I guess with that, we will wrap up our conversation. This has been great, and I have definitely learned a lot about, managing finances and how to run a business, how to start a business, and especially in terms of a crisis and how to navigate through that. So thank you so much for us for taking out time. Thank you so much, Shaista. And this has been great. I'm sure our audience has enjoyed the questions as well. Before we close, I would just like to tell you guys that we have dropped in our feedback form in the chat. So please take out some time to fill it out. We would like to hear back from you so we can improve our services. And also, if you want to follow Seed's Facebook page, I'm just going to drop their URL in the chat box real quick as well. And also, our British Council's page has a lot of events. So we keep hosting digital events these days. And we also have our digital library that is up and running. So if you would like to know more about that, please check our page as well. It's called British Council Pakistan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Maximus, as well.
Yes, there's a cat as well, guys. So bye. Take
Bye.
care.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.